Testing 1, 2. So, good morning. This podcast is inspired by my dream last night. So, to give you a little backstory on it, I've been thinking a lot about my marketing and I should say lack thereof of putting my product more in the public eye and really marketing my services. And sometimes in life where when you don't do, you might have an area where it might not be how you want it. And sometimes it could overshadow the rest of your life. But all it takes is a little bit of refocusing to realize what gems are really, really there. So without further ado, this one is called Overall Good. So, hi guys, my name is Donnie Rouse, and you are listening to the podcast One Life. Overall Good. What is an area of your life that you find quote unquote problematic? Or perhaps there's a gap in a certain area. Maybe it's with your physical health in your body. I want you to focus on that for a moment. Focusing on that one aspect of your life. How does that overshadow every other area of your life? Do you let it overshadow? Sometimes it is very easy to let one aspect of our lives overshadow the rest to the point where we start to think that life is, that it's not good and that we're struggling. When the truth is, if you were to actually just switch your perspective and look at all the good things that were going on in your life, you could now look at that one area, the one aspect where you're experiencing that gap, and realize that it really isn't that bad. So what is that area for you? And if you are honest with yourself, what does the rest of your life look like? Like, what are the great things in your life? That's the better question is, what are the great things? What things are great in your life that you could be truly happy about? Now, if you ask yourself that question and you honestly answered it, you'll see that one, your mood starts to lift. It starts to shift. And then now that gap that you're experiencing doesn't seem like it's all that important. And while some people may say, well, that's kind of denying what is, right? If I'm not putting the focus on that area of the gap, then things are, then I'm not being honest with myself. And I will say no. By choosing to focus on what's good, it takes some of that weight off. It makes it lighter. So now when you focus on the area, you're focusing it from a different set of eyes, a different focus. Because when you're focusing on what you don't have, all of a sudden now that's exactly where your focus is going, and it starts to debilitate you from taking action forward, maybe until you hit like a certain threshold of pain. But if you're after feeling good, if life is about the emotions and we want to feel the good emotions as much as we can, then why not let's look at the blessings first. Last night, I had a dream of this exact podcast and the lesson I wanted to give. And the reason it was coming about, because I had been beating myself up over my marketing efforts. And when I say marketing efforts, I mean not really marketing at all. I had been doing farmers markets and I was putting my product out there, which was great. Person to person, I thrive. But doing on social media, it was kind of challenging. I mean, I find doing these podcasts very, very different. Even though I do them live, you'll notice by the eye contact I have with my camera, I imagine myself to be speaking to one person. Sometimes many people, but nevertheless, I see it as more of a personal conversation. When it came to doing any kind of social media posts, all of a sudden now I would kind of like shrivel and shrink. And I would start to question my abilities and confidence and all these other things. Literally would start to pile on like it was like an avalanche. And as a result of that focus, it made me feel kind of crappy about everything else that was going on in my life. Not to say that I felt crappy about it, but my focus wasn't going towards the good things, the things that were pleasant, the blessings that I have, like the people in my life. Even some of the growth experiences that I've experienced in the past month, which have been many. So when I woke up in the morning, I woke up with that question. I said, well, what's good in my life right now? Like if I were to take this one aspect out, Like, how much emphasis am I putting on this one aspect of my life that is not where I want it to be, right? Because it's such a vague statement because someone who's not in our position might look to where you are and be like, oh my God, that is where I want to be. Where you're like, you know what? I am in the gap. I need a change. I need to grow more. And I want you to be okay with that because that's part of life. That is natural because you're always, anytime you're stagnant in a certain area, there's always going to feel this nagging desire to grow because by growing, we feel more fulfilled. But if you're doing it, if you're focusing on that and you're allowing it to literally pull all the other or I would say drown out all the good that's in your life, then there's something extremely wrong with that. So I asked myself the question, I was like, all right, well, if I were to take this one aspect that I'm not, what would my life look like then? My memories, my thoughts went to this past weekend where I saw my friend Maritza, my friend, and a couple other, my friend Nathan and Eduardo, and just some experiences I had traveling to Colombia, and then the experiences I'm going to have because I'm going to Italy shortly. I'm like, well, aside from that, life's pretty freaking good, you know? And then it got me thinking, I was like, man, like how often do you literally focus on the thing that's not good or the thing that's not where you want it to be at the cost of everything else? You can't see the forest for the trees. That's how it goes. You can't see the forest for the trees because you're so focused on the thing that's grabbing your attention that you fail to realize all the beauty that's already surrounding you, all the good that's already in your life, all the blessings that you've already received. So this podcast post here is just to realign the focus and get you to see what you may not be seeing right now. Because I promise you, once you start to look at the things in your life that you can be appreciative of, that you can be grateful for, all of a sudden everything starts to shift. Like the mood starts to line up. And as a result, you're opening yourself to all that magic. The One Life podcast, it was really, when I started this podcast, it was all about about living your one life, like going out, doing that thing, like the traveling around the world, like all those, having those experiences. And while it is very, very much still focused on that, right? Because I believe that life is short. And with the limited time that each of us has, we have to make the most of it. We got to do the things that light up our souls. But it isn't about that, right? If you look at the grand scheme of life, right? These experiences, they're like kind of like little, if you look at it like a current distribution where they're like these spikes in certain segments of our life, right? You see a little flat line, all of a sudden trip to Italy, there's a spike, then it comes back down, trip to Thailand, spike, come down, have your first child, spike, come back down. But the majority of life is not really like that, right? It's the day-to-day things that make up the bulk of your life. So why not focus on enjoying those? That is the part, that's the whole ritual of Ralph's Coffee. That's where I stem from. That's why I put so much effort into the roasting, and constantly upgrading my skills to be able to provide an experience for the person who's drinking my coffee, to put them in that moment, to make them still, and make them just kind of savor the simple pleasures of life. And that is not something, you don't need a cup of coffee to do that, right? All it takes is asking a different question at the beginning of your day or any point in your day for that matter. Like, what is good in your life? I will challenge you. So what is the area? Let's go back to those questions. Like, what is the area of your life where you feel like it's complete shit? Well, we won't even be blunt around it. And if you're honest with yourself, what is good in your life right now? Right? If you're feeling like you're in the dumps, chances are there's a lot of growth, a lot of new questioning that is going on as a result. So you could start to focus on that if you're focusing on that gap. But let's look to the other areas of your life, your family, your friends. Maybe you love manga like I do. I love Japanese anime. And so when I see that, I really, really enjoy it a lot. But it makes me kind of laugh at life. It makes me remind me that, like, you know what? there are a lot of things that I get pleasure of that I sometimes neglect or I don't acknowledge. And I feel grateful for the people who are creating these things, like who are the creatives who are making these storylines. And because without them, I wouldn't have that enjoyment. So do this. It may even help to write it down on paper because sometimes you could swirl in your head, but when you put it down on paper and you force yourself to literally come up with 10 things and really focus on those things that you're writing down, slowly you'll start to shift. And I know without beyond a reason, I can't even speak, beyond the reason of a doubt, that if you do that, it's going to start to change the way you feel. And you're going to feel lighter at whatever it is that's bothering you, whatever you think that it is that's getting you down. It's going to slowly shift your perspective on it. And as a result, you may find new actions to take because now you're not just beating that dead horse. You're like, you know what? Everything else is good. This area is an area that needs some work and attention. So in closing, life is beautiful. Your life is beautiful. Take your focus away from the thing. It's kind of like the person who screams louder, the squeaky wheel gets all the attention, right? Maybe the wheel just needs a little bit of grease, right? And maybe everything is all good. And it's just one little thing, or maybe you needed a little air. But don't let it, throw off the rest of your life because of one thing. So that is all I have for you guys on this episode, but I hope it gets you to start to just think differently about problems. Problems are areas of opportunity to grow. And you're never going to escape problems because they're going to be in your life for the rest of your life. So you might as well get used to them. And you might as well just start to maybe joke around and start to just enjoy them. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this in some way impacts your days, weeks, months, years going forward. Just to remember that life is beautiful. Life is what you make it. And your focus, where you're putting your focus, means everything. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can send me a message or a comment via my website at www.donnierouse.com. Again, www.donnierouse.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time and just being here to listen to these words, to improve yourself, to grow yourself, to shift your focus so that you start to feel better and you start to create the life that you were meant to live. So I thank you for that. So without further ado, that is all I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. God bless, and remember, you get one life. Live it. Thank you very much.